Welcome to a Christian business podcast. I am one of your hosts. The other, of course, Justin, of the last few episodes, has been super busy, so he hasn't been able to be with us. But he is plowing snow today, unfortunately. But welcome to Michigan, right? So today we are here with Pat and Lori with Rent Smart in Grant, Michigan, a rental equipment. And Pat has got quite a story of their business, and so excited to dig into that, hear their personal testimonies like we always do. And so without further ado, we're going to jump right in. Pat's brought a devotion for us today, which is exciting because you probably are all sick of hearing my devotion. So Pat, Lori, welcome. And
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us. And what you got?
My reading is from Joshua 1, and it's a verse that we have on our Sparta location building, and it's verse 9. Have I not commanded you, be strong and courageous, do not be terrified, do not be discouraged, for the Lord your God will be with you wherever you go. And if you look further up in the verse, Moses has passed away, and God is talking to Joshua, and he's telling them that we're going to lead you through the Jordan and onto some property, and you're going to own it all, and we'll protect you in all of that. And if you go on to the verse just before 9, it says, then you will be prosperous and successful. And I think that means that if we follow God's leading, and first of all, if we seek Him, a lot of people pray and ask for things, but they don't necessarily wait for the answer. I feel like that we've always tried to follow His leading in our business.
Right.
So that's an important verse to us that we put on our location in Sparta when we built it.
Got you. For the Lord is with you. And I think you're right. I think a lot of times that we do pray for that, and then we move on, and we miss the withing. I talk a lot about withing, and that's kind of that communion, that relationship, that relational, emotional connection there. And so we pray for this thing, and while I'm waiting for it, I'm going to keep doing this over here. Well, wait a minute. The purpose of that prayer, the purpose of that going to God is a lot of times more about the relationship than it is the actual thing you're praying for. And I think that applies so much in business, because a lot of us that are business owners, we're business owners because we do stuff. Right? And so it's just in our nature, that entrepreneurial mindset to just go do stuff and make stuff happen. And then we ask God to do something. And instead of going and being withing with him, we go and try and do stuff. And we miss the total point.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, I appreciate that. That's good stuff. So, and that was Joshua 1, right at the beginning there, Joshua 1:9. Okay. Excellent. God says, be strong and courageous a whole lot of places. And you guys, in terms of your story, your business story, I mean, that has really been something that you've really had to lean into, because you've had some really big ups and downs to walk through. And so I'm excited to hear about some of that. But first, I want to kind of hear about you guys. And so talk to me first, Pat, why don't you kind of walk us through Pat before Christ and then Pat after Christ, and what that meant for you to truly trust God and to follow Jesus kind of from beginning to end. So start at square one.
Sure. Sounds good. Thank you. So I was brought up Catholic, and nothing against Catholic or whatever, but we never really were taught to have our own personal relationship with Jesus. However, I've always known about God. I've always prayed to God. Mm-hmm. And then I hear an awful lot about, when were you saved? And people can mention the time and date, and I don't have a time and date that says when I was saved. Mm-hmm. I feel that, like I said, I've always believed in God, but I think my spiritual life and growth it's a progress. It's not a perfection. It's a progress program for me, and I've just stuck with it. Always believed. We've always tithed. People, even when we were having kids and getting started, mm-hmm. we always tithed. And they said, "Oh, how can you do that?" But we did that first, like it says in the Bible. We mm-hmm. did that first, and God blessed us mm-hmm. in many ways because mm-hmm. of that.
Took care of you, right?
So it wasn't a magical, white light event for me. It's mm-hmm. just been a walk.
Yeah, we talk a lot of times with a lot of people about, I was raised in the Christian faith, and I got kind of a boring testimony. And I like the way, and whatever you want to do with him, Mark Driscoll, but I like the way he talked about it, saying, look, hey, it's awesome that, some people have this like big, like you said, white light experience testimony and, oh, I was on drugs and I was, dead in a ditch and whatever. And that's awesome. He said, but praise God for those of us that have boring testimonies. God protected us from a lot of the ravages that sin would have in our lives. And so, to say, well, it's just kind of always knew Jesus. Well, awesome. Let's hear about that, because the other thing is there's a lot of people out there going, well, am I really saved? Well, hey, do you trust Jesus for salvation? Are you trusting in yourself? And so I appreciate hearing those kind of boring testimonies, because I think they still do speak to a lot of people.
Yeah.
So obviously you would see long term, there's kind of a difference in who you are and how you operate after Christ from how you were and how you operated early on. Do you see any kind of even a slow and gradual transformation that happened over time as you deepened relationship with God?
I would say that it got deeper when I got married. We started attending. We lived in Grand Rapids, so we were trying, I was raised Catholic, she was raised Reformed, got married in the Reformed church, looked at several churches down there. They were big and cumbersome, and I don't know, we just didn't really feel like we connected.
Sure.
We started traveling up to Newaygo, up to Grant, to First Reformed Church in Grant, where her folks were at, and they live on Hess Lake. So we did that for several years.
Commute to church.
It was kind of nice, actually, because if you were late, you could actually make up a little bit of time. I don't know if that's a part that you need to edit or not, but on
that one for us.
On a 45-minute ride, you can make up 5 minutes if you have to, But with the kids and all that, and it was really cool because we spent the day with them, or we did Bible studies. We did a lot of different things, and actually, that's what brought us to the Grant area. Just sitting chatting with somebody one time, and we bought a 1968 Scut trailer right in Grant and rented the property from the farmer, and that was our first house in Grant.
That was it, huh?
But so that was the married part, and I just feel like through some of the ups and downs of life and of business that it just has grown stronger, and my reliance is greater. I see the blessings of depending on and listening to God. I see that. Because we've been, like I said, it's life, and we've been through stuff, but we've managed to make it through all those.
Right. No, absolutely. And I think, kind of that gradual growth. We were talking about the transfiguration when Peter was up there and he's like, let's build tents and let's do this, have this mountaintop experience. And Jesus like, we got work to do, let's get, and so sometimes I think it's nice that when you don't have those huge, because you can tend to want to make that the norm. And so you can see God slowly over time. We have some ups and downs, but you can see that. So Lori, you were saying kind of your story is kind of similar in terms of not this big, eye-opening, drop on the floor kind of experience, but that kind of just a slow, gradual, more depth of understanding of who God was. Talk to me about that.
Yeah, we would, when I was a kid, I went to camps a lot. And so, of course, then they're like, hey, so of course I accepted Christ every time I went,
right?
Because I was
just
young and I didn't really,
stick.
Yeah. Made my profession of faith at 14, but it wasn't a relationship, like Pat said, until we were married and we really started to seek a church that we were both comfortable in together. So it's just grown over time, and I can see God's work in my life. I answered prayers. I keep a prayer journal, and it's really fun to go back and read and then see where He answered my prayer.
So do you think maybe that the particular faith community that you grew up in maybe was a little more conducive to that more knowledge than heart connection to God?
Yeah, I would say my dad would be a big influence on me, and he was a quiet man. I mean, he always believed, but he wasn't one to talk about it a lot. But you could see it in his life.
Right, exactly. So yeah, I think there are some, and it takes all kinds, right? And there's all kinds of, one body, many members, right? And I think that a lot of times there are ways, there are places we grew up. We talked to an Amish friend of mine, Mose, on the podcast a while back, and just kind of that every faith community has their weak points. And I think sometimes here in West Michigan, one of the weak points is we get heady knowledge of God, and our kids start to learn a relationship with God that's more based on the head than the heart. I think you have the opposite in some other areas where like they're they're worshiping with all their heart, but their mind's not involved and their depth of understanding. So I'm kind of, it's sounding to me kind of like that kind of had an impact where you moved from head knowledge to heart knowledge and experiential knowing. Is that right?
That's right. Yeah.
Okay, got you. So now that's I love that part, and I love hearing where people are coming from, and I love how it plays into their story in business. So I'm really excited to hear you guys' story about business and what God did with Rent Smart. And so, but before we get there, you graduate high school, and you get married, and are you working for someone else? Are you an employee, or did you jump right into business ownership, or what happened there?
You want me to go?
Yeah.
That's a good long story as well. But so
it's a good start. Good start. All right.
I came from restaurants, and actually that's where we met. And Lori has a cosmetology license, so she was doing hair and working restaurants as a cocktail waitress, and I was waiting tables, and then we met there. And then one thing leads to another. We get married, but done a couple different things. Worked with my dad and brother in the painting industry. Did that for 3 years, and that wasn't a really good idea, I guess, at the time. But and then
wait.
Oh,
so. Wait, why wasn't that a good idea?
Well, here, let me just make it simple for you. My dad and my brother.
I see.
Catholic,
Okay.
Catholic upbringing. So it was just not, 3 chiefs. There really wasn't. It was back in a time where there was, right now you could be a painter and make good living, but it was hard. And the 3 of us working together was hard.
Got you. Okay. All right. So you're painting, and you're like, we got to spread those wings a little bit. And then
for some reason, I had an inkling to go to college and become a teacher, and we had children at the time, and Lori was on board with that. Did 2 or 3 years of college full-time, working part-time, and a family when she was pretty much holding the household down. And then, lo and behold, I get 6 weeks into my teacher assisting program and didn't really feel that calling anymore. Did not want to be a teacher.
Lori, was this like a you what? Or was this like no, you're right.
No, that's a you what?
Okay.
Some explicatives in there, I'm sure.
You had you invented some of those good CRC swear words of golly gee willikers and fiddlesticks and yeah, I'm sure that's how it went. So he comes to you and says, I really don't think this is where I'm called to. And you're sitting, how many kids at this time?
I was pregnant with my second.
You're pregnant with your second child. And so you're staring at the belly and going, you want to stop the path we're on when you are, how far were you from like teaching certificate?
Probably a semester away. I had to do teacher, what's it called when I was just assisting, but then I had to teach.
Okay. So
I was close.
So you were close. That I'm watching. I wish one of these days we'll have to start recording video because this is Lori's facial expressions are just fantastic here. I love it.
I'm hoping this was a good idea, both of us being together. I'll let you know later on this afternoon.
These are the best. We had Kent and Kim Carnamat on the show once. That was a lot of fun with a husband and wife, and then the Vishers the other day. That was good. So it's always good to see kind of that combination. And okay, wait, there's a story here. There's a story in that facial expression. So anyway, sorry. So okay, so now, oh goodness, this is not where I feel God's calling us. And she's like, and then what?
That lasted for a little bit.
Don't let the software cut that out for us. That was there for a point.
But I just listened to the Vishers, and then they commented a lot the we part, and it's always been, even though one we had a stronger idea on where things were going to go, it's always been a we in business and family and everything. And I like that about what Caleb and Sarah had to share. But so lo and behold, then just discussion with father-in-law, brother-in-law, let's start a rental store in Grant. Lo and behold, we do that. Bought a building. It was Butler Motor Sales at the time.
What brought you to that? Like why? So let me, just in case that loud truck picked up. So you started this rental place in Grant. Where did that? I mean, you had painted and cooked, and now all of a sudden you're renting Skytrax. I mean,
father-in-law was a Kubota dealer in Grand Rapids, and also rented equipment.
This is my stepdad. So I
got you. I see. So there, that was the end. I was like,
Mm-hmm.
where did they just say, hey, let's rent equipment? Okay. So he was a Kubota dealer and was like, hey, there's a market for rentals.
Yep.
What do you guys think? And so you went to the bank and borrowed a bunch of money and.
Well, actually, Todd and I were relatively young with not much for credit scores to speak of, minority shareholders in the business. And, he was kind of the backer and helped get it rolling. And that went along pretty good for a while. It was Todd and I running the daily, and he never even was on scene that much until about 5 or 6 years in, I'd say. I don't know if anybody's familiar with Grant, but there's a whole big campus down there that was built when we were there, and a building went up and another building went up, and Todd left, Lori got fired. In a quick nutshell of that business, it was 5, 6, and 7 when the economy was starting to turn down. At the same time, against my better judgment, we were building infrastructure and inventory and people. We were up to 48 people at one time, 3 semi-trucks. It was difficult to maintain that. And then,
so you saw some of the writing on the wall.
yeah, but we never had much, this is the way you got to do it, Patrick. This is what I would hear all the time, because I came, I didn't have the experience. I had 8 years experience by then, but I didn't come to the table with it. And my opinion didn't really so much matter a whole lot.
And there was no A Christian Business podcast at that time for you to be able to gain.
Sorry,
I had to make a plug.
It's funny that you say that, but I definitely wanted to mention a book that Lori got. It was Business by the Book by David Burkett, I think it was. And she handed it to her stepdad. You should read this. And it's basically how to run your business based on the Bible. That book, Biblical Principles. He took it home, and I don't know that he ever even broke the cover, but we asked for it back. Yeah, that doesn't pertain today, is what he said.
Okay.
So I grabbed it up and I read it, and I feel very strongly that it does pertain today. And I try to use biblical principles in what we do.
And operate in business. So, okay, for a while there, the business was doing really, really well, yes? Did it just look like it was doing well?
It did do well for a while.
Okay.
But towards the end, it looked like it was doing well.
I see. Yeah, because I'm driving by there, and you got, 15 machines, 80 feet in the air with boom lifts, and now your trucks and your all kind of equipment. What would you say your highest point in terms of inventory was, dollar value? Do you have
it was in the millions. Yeah. We have a photo we have a couple aerials that we don't try to think about. Those days were, I learned how to do rentals. I learned a lot about what to do, what not to do. But we kind of look back at the end of that as sort of a pretty dark period. So we don't talk about it a lot. We don't mention the guy's name. You'll notice that hasn't come up yet. But
right.
I forgot where I was going with that.
But you have some aerial photos and stuff.
Oh, yeah. From 01, we have a picture at our building just to remind us, because I feel that went way too fast. Too much infrastructure. It just went too fast. It was more of an ego deal than it was a smart business deal.
I think
and the photo on the wall shows, I've showed people that. There's 15 Skytrax, 2 semi-trucks. There's 30 ASV RC 30s. There's couple dozen, that right then you're looking, and that was 01, and it went clear up till 06. It was still growing through those next few years, and that had to be easy, a couple $1 million worth of inventory.
Oh, easily. Absolutely. I mean, goodness, a Skytrax can cost $100,000. Yeah, and you got 10 of them sitting there. Hello. So you see all this. Now, how is this? I mean, Lori, did you kind of see any of this writing on the wall? Did you guys talk about this a lot of like, I don't know, Lori, something's not right here? I mean, obviously you got the book and you thought, hey, like, was that getting the book was like, hey, we could do better, or getting the book was like, hey, we're in trouble? Where did you see that come in, Lori?
Well, the book was, hey, we're in trouble. And then some of my conversations with him are why I got fired. Because I'm like, this has to stop, this has to stop, this has to stop. And he told me to go home and take care of my kids and cut hair. So
So, and then Pat, you get a hold of this thing and you're like, okay, but you don't have a lot of say and control. And so now you're like, so you are seeing the writing on the wall. You are seeing, and now we're coming in 2007. And now I say the next number, and every builder in the world is going and cringing, 2008. And oh, shoot. So now you have this book and you have this multi-million-dollar worth of inventory. Were you on the hook for like all this credit and debt and everything?
Yes.
Okay.
We're going to get to the end and talk about what to do
absolutely.
and what not to do.
Right,
But,
right.
an LLC is a piece of paper. Everybody who's on that piece of paper signs. Everybody is 100% responsible if the other guys aren't going to participate. Towards the end, we were on the hook for $3.2 million. And we could set up a nice payment plan and do, I'm not going to be able to satisfy a $3.2 million debt.
Right.
We're just
not cutting hair and flipping burgers,
and
right?
trying to make, just make a living. And the book was just a tool. We did see the writing. I hadn't signed anything. I wouldn't sign anything. I haven't signed documents. I didn't sign checks. For 2 years, I hadn't done any of that. We couldn't get fuel for the salesman. Some of our lines were cut off on parts. My brother-in-law was gone in 01 or thereabouts. She was gone in 06, I think. 04, I guess. But
so you're standing here holding the bag without
we're
any
kind of
control over
We're
the
kind
bag.
of wondering what to do. We went to an attorney. Can you make sense of these articles of incorporation? Can you tell me if we're going to keep our house, lose our house, or where we're going to end up when this gets to the end? Because we strongly felt that it was headed for disaster or an end. I got fired, which was actually, it lifted the cloud. When I walked away from there, the cloud dissipated. I had no job, 4 kids at home, and a house.
And you felt better
and
than
no
you felt
job
in the past 10 years.
Right.
So
for the last few anyways.
So, okay, so if I understand this, so you got fired. So you were part owner holding a bag. And you guys are stressing because now you have, what you said, 4 kids now. You had 4 kids. You've lost your job, which was a steady paycheck.
Yep.
Were you drawing any kind of a profit check or any kind of or were you just getting a salary, kind of a S corp, kind of just getting a paycheck? Okay. And so you had the steady income personally, but you were concerned that was in jeopardy if the business went under. So all that stability in, hey, there's money coming into our personal account every month, but what if the business goes under? Are we losing? And so you talked to the attorney, and the attorney said, I don't know, or the attorney said, hey, this is what you can do. What did that look like?
It's sort of hard to explain, and it's long-ish story.
That's okay.
But
well,
we had investors come into the thing, and they threw money at it, but we didn't adjust our articles of incorporation that said who owned what or what the shares were. So our attorney couldn't really make much sense of it. He says the likelihood that you lose your house is minimal because it's your house, it's where you live. It's a LLC. To pierce the house and get that, there's got to be some blatant negligence or thievery or embezzlement or something like
that. Which you obviously didn't have.
Right.
So ultimately, the attorney helped a little bit set you at ease. So, because I'm thinking like, okay, so you don't know if you're going to lose your house and now you get fired from a business. So, okay, so the attorney at that time did give you a little bit of peace of mind and you could sleep at night.
A little bit, but that 3.2 is still out there. That doesn't go away when I'm fired, and we had no idea what was going to happen.
I see. So now you get fired.
Yep.
You feel the relief of stress, and it's kind of like, okay, the 3.2, it is what it is. Here we are, but we're not going to be put out on the street homeless. And the attorney has settled that a little bit. So now you know quite a bit about the rental industry. You're home with the kids. Did you find another job, Lori? Or?
Yeah, I worked part-time for the city of Grant for 10 years. I was a city treasurer.
Got you. Okay. And that probably was a little less stressful.
Yeah.
So we're in 2000. When did you get fired? 08, 09?
July 06.
July 06. Okay, so you were able to separate yourself before the big crash.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay, so you get fired. Now the business does tank, right?
It closed so I get fired, and her and I, we're going to go start another business. We figure it's going to be in rentals. We don't think it's going to be in Grant because they're right next door. I'm not going to go get a job. It's not fair to somebody else to work for 6 months when we're going to start up in the spring again.
Right.
So we just kind of did some little projects here and there, and it was actually a really good learning experience for our kids because I was unemployed from July until we started up again in April. And
did you just have savings that you were living off? Okay,
used it up.
Got you. Okay,
but we rely on God's provision, and He doesn't want us to store up $1 million. We didn't have $1 million. We had enough to get by for a little while. But the cool part about it is we owned a few tents, and I had the painting experience. And Lori would say, hey, we kind of used everything up, and I need about $300 for groceries, or we got a house payment coming due, or whatever. And somebody would call me up and say, hey, paint my living room. Or we need a tent for this weekend. Do you have one?
Right.
So the kids really saw that because they knew we were getting by, just getting by.
Right.
So they got to see that experience.
Got you. And so you didn't stop working. So, and you still had a little bit of this, a little bit of that. And then God did provide through this period. So 2006, you're fired. So 6 months without, and then you're like, hey, let's do this again the right way.
Yep. They closed November of 2006.
Were you responsible for any of that debt or anything?
We got
hit with a little bit?
Well, it got cleared up, and I'm not sure how, because the auction sale didn't generate near as much as we knew the debt was.
But nobody called you asking for money?
I think somebody just put some cash in because they couldn't risk.
Right. Their own.
Right. The name, the bankruptcy. I don't really know. I don't really care. There were a couple things that came through.
They knew they weren't getting it from you.
Yep.
And so they're like, well, I can chase them down. You can't, what do we always say, you can't get blood from a rock, right?
Yep.
And so they probably kind of figured that. And then, so you guys like walked away, other than the depleted savings, you walked away pretty unscathed from that.
Oh, for sure.
Financially. Praise God for that. And, and so is this a time, Lori, where you were one of those times where you're saying like, your prayer journal and like, was this a really big thing for you to see God actually, like, I believe God will provide, and oh my goodness, he did. Were you surprised? Do you think you were surprised when you got to the end of that 6 months and was like, hey, we made it?
No, a few things happened along the way. He was able to win an election for county commissioner. And that was really helpful because that gave a small income.
Just right.
But
$10,000 a year.
10 grand, yeah.
But
not
hey,
very much. And health
groceries.
Insurance for my family, which is huge.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness, yes. Because you have 4 kids at this time, right? So, okay. All right.
Yeah. So that was helpful. And I just could see, the prayer journal started later, but I could just see, I'm a worrier. So that's my nature. And it was, but I knew we were going to be okay because we always were.
He gave you little pieces and little pieces and little pieces so that when it came to the worry about the big piece, you're like, well, he did all of this. Why is he not going to, the difference between $10 and $10 million for God is nothing. So if he can pay my light bill, then this $3.2 million that we may be looking at, he's going to pay it just the same as he takes care of the light bill.
Yeah, it went away.
Praise God that your heart was able to make that shift. Because I think a lot of times we don't. I think, it's like, oh, I trust God, be strong and courageous. Well, that's a command, but why does he have to command us that? Because it's not natural to us. And so we sit back there and we go, okay, be strong and courageous, be strong, courageous, be strong, courageous. Go to your happy place, go to your happy, and sometimes it's not there for a lot of folks. So praise God that he was able to give you little pieces of, I think about the Israelites in the desert, and God said, just collect enough manna for today.
Yeah.
I'm just going to give you enough for today. And they had a choice. They could recognize that as God providing what they needed, or they could worry about whether it was coming the next day. And praise God, I think in some ways that he forced them. He made it rot, right? Yeah. Did you see times where God made it rot if you started to reach for too much? Do you see that at all? Like, does that analogy fit or no? I'm just curious.
I don't think there was ever a time to set enough aside for it to rot.
Right. You didn't have the option.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
Okay. Well, okay. So you've kind of come through this 6-month stint where God's just little pieces, little bits of manna, and now it's time to start the business. And you don't want to start in Grant.
Well, the original intent was not to start in Grant because
that's right next
Grant
door.
Rental was right next door. They closed in November. And actually, we had ownership in a building right next door, 50-50 with my father-in-law.
What was the purpose? Was that part of the...
we rented it out and we used the yard. So if you remember
gotcha.
back in those days, there was equipment clear all the way out, almost to the city office, to the other street there.
Mm-hmm.
That was our building. we rented it out, and then Grant Rental utilized the whole backyard.
Got it. Okay,
So
so
we
you
were
did have that little bit of something to hang on to.
sort of, because it was upside down when it was purchased, because
Right,
he had to
right.
have it. It was late on payments and taxes
Mhm.
and everything else, and we were able to gain ownership of it.
But
and
God
he's
allowed
out.
God
Yeah.
allowed you to have a foot in the door.
Yep. We had a building.
You had a building, which is huge. I mean,
Yep.
we're in the middle of building ours right now, and it's like,
Yeah.
I mean, it's a big deal.
Oh yeah.
So you have that. It's like, well, we got that here. What are you doing, God? And so at what point did you say we are starting our own rental business? When you walked out the door being fired, or 6 months before, or 6 months after? At what point did you say we're going to do this rental business?
We talked about it an awful lot, prayed about it an awful lot. I don't remember how old I was, 40s, let's say 40 something, and didn't really want to go out and try something new. Didn't really want to work for somebody else. My daughter's definition she shared with me of an entrepreneur is somebody that likes to work 80 hours a week to get out of work in 40 hours a week. And I just couldn't.
That's you know
Well,
what? I like that definition.
There are some freedoms that go along with
Sure,
ownership,
sure.
and that's in my blood. It's like you said, it's part of who we are.
Podcast on a Friday afternoon.
Right. So I'm going to go to my skill set, painting, restaurants, rentals. And we decided on rentals.
Sure.
We had the building.
Sure.
Went to the banker man, $170,000 that we tried to get, or that we borrowed. Took all the tools from the house that I could come up with and opened a little rental store. And that right there, you know, we talked about it, but she wasn't super excited about that,
Doing this again.
We've done it, you know, it's hard work.
When did that, was that I'm still not quite sure after he started, or or did you not start until you were both like, yep, this is right? Do you think it took you a little while to come into it, or maybe there it is?
Yeah, too bad you don't have a video. She didn't get into it until about a couple years ago.
Yeah. Well, there's been many moments where I'm like, why did we do this again? Just because the first time we started really small, it was Pat and my brother, and then my stepdad as a sort of silent partner guiding us through it. But I mean, we were living below poverty level, you know, and we were, because when you own a business, you take out only what you can. And I knew I didn't want to go through that again, you know, because I knew it was hard. So we did it. We've done this before, and it's this. We were growing it slower, so it's been the last few years have been good, but there's times when I'm like, I'm sick of this. When can we retire?
Right. So when he started, you were agreeing, but you were not excited.
I wouldn't say I wasn't excited. I knew this is where we were going to go, so I was all in.
Kind of like, okay, if this is where you're going to lead us, then I'm going to follow you, and I will express my opinion and my heart, and trust you to follow God in this. Got you. Okay. And so now you're working in the business
and at the city at the same time.
And so how long were you guys doing this on your own before you started working in the business, Lori?
Well, I started because I was only part-time at the city. So when we opened, I was there 2 days a week to do all the books.
So you started...
I started right from the beginning.
You started on payroll
and then
right away.
2015, I quit at the city and went... I'm not really full-time there, but I mean, I'm there more.
Got you. So, Pat, you said you grabbed a bunch of tools from home, chainsaws and
skill saw, whatever I had to fill
whatever
shelves,
you could to
plus
put on the shelf.
170,000. Even back in that day, 170 doesn't buy you a whole lot.
No, sure not. We just talked about it, you know.
But it's interesting. You had mentioned the contractor's opinion of 5, 6, and 7. Actually, 8 was the bottom. And talking to Banker Man, several years removed, he said, "Man, it's a good thing you were here in 07, because had you come to us in 08, you'd have never got off the ground."
Said, go pound stones.
Yep.
So you came in 07.
Yep.
They're like, okay, we got this. Were you worried about economy at that time? Did you see writing on the wall economy-wise or no? Were you like, construction industry, we might be in trouble, but we're going to do it anyway? Or were you like, no, I think we're okay?
I don't want to give away too many trade secrets, but if anybody has the desire for rental locations, we have, we got to retire. My kid might take it over. But rentals in general, if they're a seasoned and established rental location, can withstand typically any type of economy.
If you are diversified in your offerings, yes?
Yep.
If you are renting Skytrax, your Skytrack rental might dip, but people are going to keep getting married and having open houses. So if you got tents too, you're...
Right. Well, we're general and all-purpose.
Gotcha.
So when the economy is good, everybody's doing everything,
Mm-hmm.
When it starts to take a dip, the homeowner might do it themselves versus hire the contractor. The contractor's going to rent it versus buy it. So it's kind of a trickle down.
Got you. So you are hedged a little bit.
We can get through it.
Right.
It's not as much fun, back, and I don't want to, I don't give any credit to the pandemic that we had, and I don't want to get too political on that, but because everybody was sitting at home and they were tossing out money, that was the best year ever, 21 and 22.
Absolutely.
Gangbusters. 10 skid steers gone every day. You could hardly keep track of stuff.
Absolutely.
So we'll never see, we'll see some growth. We have good growth. But we won't see that again. But
when you guys saw that, because you had seen the fast growth for Lori, you maybe even more so Lori, you were like, hey, this is great, but let's not get carried. Did you guys have those conversations, Pat?
Oh, yeah.
Were you like, hey, and she was like,
I want more skid steers.
And she was like, well, hang on, do you remember? So was that kind of what went on? Have you been the more conservative? Because a lot of people, it's, a lot of husband and wives we talk to, they're, one's more conservative than the other in terms of growth. One's like, let's go. Is that where you guys are at?
Yeah, I pay the bills. So I know what they are. Right. So he'll ask me, can we do it? And I'm like, well, I'll ask a lot of questions. Do we need it? What will it do? What do you think? And I'll base it off from that. Most of the time I say, yeah, go ahead. Because he does know what he's doing. So I trust his judgment on that. But like we're just discussing some, purchases for this year. And I'm like, well, can we wait? Can we do, that kind of thing.
So you're more conservative. He's more, hey, let's invest in this because it's working. And so you guys kind of find a middle ground there.
Right.
But I think that's an important thing to share is like the yin and yang or how we work together. I'm not saying I'm the dreamer, but I want to go out and get stuff and add more of the inventory. And this is why, and this is how it'll benefit. She says, yeah, but let's wait or let's do it this way.
Let's watch and make sure this is not just a COVID thing.
And I'm not an office work, bookkeeper, accountant kind of guy. And she is. So she does a wonderful job
play off the strengths and
balancing the books and making it work.
Absolutely. So you're just kind of slowly adding equipment as the cash allows you to. Yep. Did they open up lines of credit farther for you, or did you just try and pay cash for stuff, or where did that?
It took a little bit.
Got you.
But based on our experience the first time around, where we were just buying to buy and have, I don't understand. I'm still not 100% sure why it went that way. But when we were doing good and we felt the need for more skid steers, we added more skid steers. We started with one skid steer, one Kubota tractor, one excavator, and some tools. Between the two stores, we have 10 skid steers, 5 Kubotas, 6 excavators, 30 trailers, plus all the other stuff. And that was just a slow, methodical...
Over the past 16 years.
Yeah, where's our 18th season, 19th season or something?
So, okay. So, those purchase decisions, just curiosity, nuts and bolts stuff, do you do those based on like, okay, we're scheduled out for 8 weeks on skid steers, we should probably get another one? Or how do you kind of run those? How do you run your investment decisions in your particular industry? How do you run your investment decisions based on, hey, it's time to get another skid steer? Do you guys have some rules of thumb that you track each other by, or?
There's some rule of thumb, and a lot of it's gut or instinct. Early in the season, and it has a lot to do with utilization. If we're turning people away because we don't have any skid steers, then we probably should get some more.
Right.
Same with scaffolding. We got 60 frames of 5x5 right now because we built the inventory because that was the need. The first business was it was almost let's buy this stuff just to have it and look cool.
Right.
We're buying stuff because I'll
Somebody
put it to
keeps
rent.
calling
I'm gonna
you
start
and-
generating income on it. We don't buy out of speculation. We buy. A friend of mine has a rental store. He's got 42 years experience over in Muskegon. He says, picking little cherries. That's what you're doing. Picking easy fruit. We
right.
don't have sky tracks. We don't have a semi truck.
Because you don't get called enough for it.
Well, we get calls, but it's big money to have that,
And that's a
and
lot of
we
inventory
feel like
sitting
we
there.
can. We don't need to get rich. We want to
Pay the bills.
We want to carve out a living, and have fun doing it, and
Mhm.
our staff have fun doing it.
Exactly. So let's do what we need to do to be where we need to be. And hey, some growth is fun. Some that entrepreneurial, I'm sure, in you that you've talked about is, you would like to grow, but you do it thankfully to a more conservative investor. Thankfully you do that in a very conservative and studied and careful way. And so you do you keep to, boy, that's the 26th call for a skid steer this month, and we're booked out for 2 months. Let's really look at this, and then kind of crunch the numbers and whatnot. And got you.
I could
go
share
ahead.
a cool thing though, based on what we learned out of the book. We buy what we need, and we get along with what we need, and it's proven to be successful that way. We don't have to have too much stuff. The equipment lasts as long as it lasts, and we get to turn it, and we built the inventory up to where it is. I feel like God has led us through all that. And we hear the sermons a lot about some are meant to be teachers and prophets. And I'm trying to figure out it took me a little bit to figure it out, but where's my play or my place in RentSmart in God's plan? And we're happy with it, and come to the fact that we're not big financiers, but that's where we're at. God has blessed us to be able to give some money. We're able to do that.
I see the community stuff that you guys support. I'm sure you're okay with me saying Insight Pregnancy Service, and what an incredible ministry in today's world. And we just see you guys supporting that. We see you guys supporting local things that are really Christ-centered. Christian radio you guys support. So just really awesome to see you guys in the community. I just wanted to touch on that a little bit. One of the things, I think it was Dave Ramsey in Entree Leadership, he was talking about giving. Maybe it was another time at a radio or something, but he was talking about giving versus advertising. And I just wanted to kind of pick your guys' brains on that, because you guys obviously you give, and you are very, very giving, as you see it all over the community in terms of, these places that you support, and the brand's there, and the logo's there, and it's so awesome, the places you're giving to. How do you guys keep that separate from other giving? Do you say, okay, that's kind of advertising giving, and this over here is personal giving? Don't let the right hand know what the left hand. How do you guys balance that out in terms of advertising versus giving?
So back to the tithing part, from a family income standpoint, we tithe and we give extra, and that's the personal side. The business side, I know some businesses, I give 10% off the top. It's like, wow, man, I'm not ready to do that. I can't afford that. Well, maybe I could, but based on the personal stuff, if we give first, it'll all work out. But we were scratching. It took 8 to 10 years before we were getting to where it was relatively more comfortable,
profitable outside of payroll.
Right. So when we give at the business side, it's the business giving.
And that's fine to put a logo on.
Yeah, we give secretly sometimes. We donate cash sometimes. We donate equipment or bounce houses or things like that.
Somebody at church is doing a project, and you just, don't worry, I'll take care of the bill on the skid steer, whatever, that kind of stuff.
We have an opportunity to give every single day, I think.
Right.
But I can't be at every cancer fundraiser and everything like that. But we have done those.
Well, that's where prayer comes in. If God, where do you want us to give here? Obviously, Insight Pregnancy Services is something that God continues to lay on your guys' heart. And that differentiation between advertising and giving, I think a lot of people can get out of balance. And, which line item does that go under? Well, I can make a nonprofit, donation, whatever, or I can just go write a check and say, hush, don't tell anybody where this is from. And so just the balance of that for a lot of folks is, sure, I think when we advertise, and we've been talking about this from a marketing perspective of how loud should our faith be in terms of, in terms of our marketing, does marketing our faith shut off some potential ministry and customers to serve, etc.? Are people going to walk away from that? And if we start supporting for example, Right to Life recently in Newaygo County was doing a walk, and we really kind of wrestled with, we really want to support this, but what does that look like on the backside as far as does that become a thing that's going to push people away on the other side that we might otherwise have an opportunity to minister to? How much of that is advertising? How much do we just write them a check and go? So do you guys kind of discuss, hey, let us into the conversation of somebody comes and they're asking for a donation to whatever particular cause. What does that conversation look like with you guys in determining, are we going to write a personal check? Are we going to write a business check? Or are we going to put our logo on it?
Good question.
How does that conversation go?
I will say to start with, though, that advertising dollars
Mm-hmm.
are not tied to giving dollars. We don't, if we give this, we'll get our name.
Mm-hmm.
When we support the nonprofits or whatever it is
Mm-hmm.
through an advertising campaign, or
Mm-hmm.
we're actually buying ad space, or we're doing
Mm-hmm.
something, that's that. The giving on the business side is kind of on a need to decide basis, I guess. We do talk about it. Depends on if it's our customer base or if it's just somebody just hitting everybody up,
Mm-hmm.
So yeah,
So you evaluate your giving to a particular organization from the business like you would evaluate any billboard salesman or radio broadcast salesman as just one extra pro in evaluating where to give. One extra pro is this is a faith-based organization. So if we're going to put our logo on there, hey, it's a plus that this is faith-based. Where you might look at other ones and how many people can we hit with these many dollars, right? Impressions per dollar versus faith-based. Well, this one isn't faith-based, but it's going to be 3 times the impressions per dollar. So that's a pro over here, but the other one is faith-based. So you weigh that out. Is that kind of where some of that comes in?
Yeah, so like the school, of course, always asks for money. That's the public schools. It's not faith-based.
Mm-hmm.
But it's important, I
Mhm.
think, to support them. So we're getting our name and stuff out in Sparta as well
Mhm.
to the kids, because we're trying to build that
Mhm.
business up. So yeah, I mean, but I get a request for money to support this cause or this
every
cause.
other day.
Every day.
Absolutely.
So there's usually a stack. We'll go through them and say, yeah, let's do this one, let's not do this one, and so. But then, like you said, Insight, that was one that we both discussed and said this one's important to us.
Mm-hmm.
So
Got you. And so then there's that. But then I'm and you don't have to say it, but I'm assuming that you give through the business to Insight, and I'm assuming there's some kind of, whether volunteering or giving out of the personal or whatever, kind of that hidden piece that people don't see, or whatever other ministry it is. But it's sounding like to me that the business, quotes, giving or advertising, it is advertising, and it's one of the pieces. Faith-based organization is one of the pieces that helps you determine, but it's not all of it in terms of where you're going to advertise.
I don't have a marketing degree, and this has all been by experience.
Sure.
We've been blessed to we don't have to do a lot of advertising.
Right.
We do the sports billboards and put the sign on the fence, and we do those kind of things, They bring us, when we're donating money, back to Insight real quick. We were getting to where, okay, cool, we're starting to let's make a substantial donation to somebody. Let's do that annually. And I met with Debbie Lemos and chatted with her at Insight, and then we went to Love in the Name of Christ. Both great organizations.
Oh, fantastic, yeah.
And if you want to take your dollar versus your reach, the food pantry sees 1,000 people a month, and it sees the same. And I hear a lot of negative connotations. I don't want strawberry yogurt, I want peach yogurt. And they got a $600 iPhone. And we really liked what Insight was, saving babies, man. What can be more important than saving babies?
Right?
And,
Praise God.
But their customer base over the whole year was like 300 people.
Right.
But 300 people, 300 situations, that's 300 babies. I mean, if we can reach a portion of those.
Then that's an advertising dollar well spent from that perspective, but it doesn't mean you're going to get rid of the thought of the 1,000 people at the food pantry.
Oh no.
It's because that pro of that one is the reach. So, okay, we're going to evaluate both of these with their own pluses and minuses. So, no, I appreciate that. And then, of course, the personal giving is just a prayer. Do you ever see yourself filter your personal giving, like somebody will come to the business and you go, okay, this is not where we want the business to go, but I think we're going to write a personal check for this one. You know, God's leading us to give this, but not through the business. Do you ever see that happen?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah.
Did you say anything about that? Or? Oh. So we've been married 34 years. I think that's an important thing to point out too, because that's not happening much anymore these days. And it ain't been all roses. Too bad we don't have a screen right now to see her face. But, it's been, you know,
we're gonna redo this thing with a screen. Forrest, just start taking pictures of her facial expression. We'll just post it with it. We'll post it in the comment section. No, we won't do that to you. I promise. I don't know where we're going. Sorry. It was your wife. You were distracted
so
by
we're
your
on the
wife.
we're on the same page on a lot of things. You know, hey, hey, I'd like to give to this. Yeah. So what amount did you have in mind? I say the number. It's the number she had in her head.
Oh, praise
We were
God.
sitting in the church one time, and they said, hey, if you bring all your stuff to this auction house, all the money goes towards these mission trips. I had a Honda motorcycle, hardly ever drove, and we got out of church. I said, I want to give him my motorcycle. She said, I was thinking that same thing.
Of course she was.
So I want him to get, yeah.
Really?
I want to
I
get
never thought of that before. She says,
I want to get the max dollars for the funding, and I called up the auction house, and they get 1%, and he thought it was worth such and such, and you know what? I'm just going to sell it out front and bring him the money, and they got, you know, we got like $1,600 for it. We sold it, and we took the money to the
place.
Yeah, for the church, for the mission trips.
Exactly. So it just all, so really it sounds, it's a discussion and prayer of, all right, where is this going to go? But keeping the business giving as really what it is, advertising.
It is. I expense it as advertising.
Exactly. Yeah. So whether you're giving to, you know, Insight or whatever other fund, it's advertising. Let's not kid ourselves here. Right. So no, I just appreciated that the way Dave Ramsey said that, but you know, I'm, you know, the business finances and stuff I stay with, and you know, making that decision. And a lot of people are in that position where the spouse is not so much involved in the business, and so those kinds of decisions without that second person to bounce that off of, I think sometimes think it's nice to be able to hear how that processes with a second person, and I think sometimes that can stimulate some good questions and conversations with ourselves to be able to make those decisions on ourselves. So I appreciate you guys letting us see into that a little bit.
And it's not always been money either. We were like the leaders involved with Fellowship of Christian Athletes, and we cooked a breakfast every Thursday at Grant Reformed Church, and it was a hot meal. It was 4 different meal plans. We headed that up, and we were part of it, and we were there every Thursday for 3 hours.
Sure, and that wasn't necessarily a dollars thing, as it was just
a time thing. People, it's easy for people to give money. Well, you know, to some degree versus giving away time.
Right. Yeah, you can. I'll write you a check. Just let me go. You know, get back behind the desk. Yeah. So to donate time, etc. So I think that's important too, to keep in mind of, yes, you can give money, but you know, where does God have you potentially using, like you said, where's my gifting, where's my skill set in the business, but also where's my gifting and skill set, you know, out in the world, you know, the things that make me a good business owner, you know, as we should say to ourselves, whatever it is that makes me a good business owner, hopefully, that probably has other uses in the kingdom other than me sitting behind this desk, behind this logo. You know, fellowship. Okay, well, I've cooked before. Well, just because I'm not a cook now and my business is in a restaurant doesn't mean I can't go cook for some kids who want to learn about Jesus. I think that's important to kind of keep and see where our gifting is. So I'm going to jump back just a little bit into business-wise. We kind of went through the dip and then the restart, the rebirth there, if you will, of rental. And so Lori's on board. You guys are moving. You guys are working. The business is growing. After seeing this growth concept early on, the first time explode in growth and then just tank, how is it, Lori, that you came on board with a second location? How did that happen in... Oh, boy, here we go. Another face, another face.
No, it's a good story.
It
How-
is.
so how did that happen?
Well,
How are
we
you...
go back and forth on things. So
Mhm.
Pat got this is a good story. So Pat came to me one day and said, "Hey, somebody approached me about a building. I want to do just to start out this little place in Sparta." And I'm like, "Oh, it's weird that you said that." So I handed him a book by Chip Gaines, and what is it? Capital Gains. And in it, he said, and this struck me, and I literally finished it the night before he came to me. And he said, sometimes people think you're crazy, but sometimes God's telling you to do it anyway.
So that would be very Chip Gaines, considering my wife was reading a biography. I got to say, the Chip Gaines, read a Chip Gaines and Joanna's story and then hear this quote. That just makes me want to laugh. So anyway, so he said yes.
So I said, well, to me, that says, well, maybe this is crazy, but I just finished reading this. So I handed him the book, and he's not a fast reader, but you read it in the one weekend. So we decided to go ahead and start in this building we were renting, very small, but we made it work for 4 years. So and then we decided to build a new building. We had bought property before, but then COVID hit and everything got put on hold. So we just, made payments on the land for a while until we could do something. And then that got very, very stressful.
Okay.
And then he wanted to back out. And I'm like, oh, we got all this money
Wait
invested.
a minute.
We're not backing out.
Oh, wait a minute.
So then I pushed.
So the tables turned a little bit.
I don't remember that part of the story.
And so I pushed for it and said, no, we invested too much in there. We can't get it back out. We have to go forward.
The new rule for a Christian business podcast: we are video recording every husband and wife conversation from here on out. Sorry.
So anyway,
so we can't back out. So you're like, okay, if we're gonna jump into this, then we're gonna jump into this, and you were on board because kind of felt the Holy Spirit kind of leading, like, yep, hey, climb on board with this. We're gonna do this. And then he starts to get cold feet, and you, nope, and here we go. So, okay. So now how long has that location been open?
It'll be 2 years this summer.
Got you.
Been in Sparta for 5.5, and the new building about 2 years in August. Yep.
Gotcha. Okay, so you had another. You were in another. Okay, so now you're running 2 locations. You got a good group of folks working for you. Got the equipment that you need. Obviously, God is going to lead us different ways, and we can't necessarily say what tomorrow is. But I think God is also clear in Scripture that planning is a reasonable thing for Christians who still believe in the sovereignty of God to do. So where do you see things go? Do you see yourselves kind of slowing down and just kind of getting just to a maintenance thing, or do you see yourselves kind of maybe just continuing to, if the market's there, continue to grow? Where do you guys see things going from here, having been where you've been?
When we entertained the idea of a second location, before I even approached my wife, I talked to my buddy, and we went down there and looked at it. And then that Saturday, I talked to another buddy, and I got to make sure I'm not crazy before I approach her, and so that was on board. She was on board, and then we went for it. And my friends and family said, "Why do you want to do that? You talk about less stress and different things like that." And I said, "Well, there's not enough revenue, there's not enough volume at one location for me to be able to step back away from the business, and that would be something I would highly encourage. You're looking for recommendations for kids or whoever that are starting out a business. You have to be able to work on it. You can't always be at the counter working in it. You have to step back and, how are we going to market? What are we going to buy? Where are we going to, what locations are we going to do? And all that stuff. You can't
be
just
the brain, right?
Yeah. And it used to be when it first started out, I was working in it, and at night I was working on it, and you were working in it and on it all the time.
And there's where your daughter came up with the definition of entrepreneur.
Yeah.
And so
I see we have the 2 locations, and we're still going to grow with that and fill the need where now that we've done a second location, we know how to do it.
Make that work.
Utilization is up, our our geographic footprint, because Amazon hasn't figured out how to rent equipment yet.
Right.
And they
so
soon
you're still
will.
good.
But if you drop a stone in the pond, it's going to make a ripple, and you go out a few rings, and that's our geographic service area. You know, that guy over there is going to get the customer. We're not. We're our drip line, as I call it, is pretty big, and we do get a lot of people. But having the second location has made our name a lot more recognizable. We're we're clear down to Belmont, Conklin, Comstock.
Sure. Okay.
Far north is White Cloud. We have some customers in Baldwin. I could see maybe this. You got the camera on for this one, but another location down the road, maybe somewhere. But just we don't.
Cameras aside, Lori, when he says that, what are you like?
No, right now I'm not for it.
You're not for it right now.
I'm not for it.
But,
timing's everything.
But but you could see it happening. It's not out of the question should the Lord lead that way. But
yeah, I'm not there yet.
Is
the
it
last couple of years personally have been tough for me.
Okay.
So I just can't imagine.
Is it a timing thing or a total thing?
What do you mean total?
Your resistance. Is that a timing thing or just is it a not right now or is it that's not a good idea in total?
It's for sure a not right now.
But maybe a total too,
maybe,
but not 100% sure. Not trying to cause issues there.
He already knows. We've had this discussion many times.
Send the video. That's what we need to do.
Yeah.
We need to put body cams on for the ride home too after the podcast. We won't post this until 24 hours later after you've had time to have the conversation over dinner.
But it's a timing thing, and we're still getting Sparta rolling good. And if you look back in the rockiness of life, when that business closed, the Grant rental thing, that sort of disrupted a family. We are good with the whole entire family except one, and we don't really know where he's at anymore. But over the last year, she lost her dad. You know, we were struggling with, she had breast cancer, and we had to deal with that, you know, and all the while that's life stuff happening, but you still got to do life.
Right. You got to pay the bills.
So we're at a, you know, it's in the discussion for sure. We certainly have new equipment lined up for this year, and we're happy with the crew. We're ready to move forward with what we have, but we talk about it though. That's the cool thing. I know she's not into it right now, but and it's not really. I don't want to do it just to do it to say, oh, I got 3 locations. I want to do it to serve the community. I'd really hate for us to close the shop and be gone because we are.
You are providing.
We provide a good service.
You provide a good service. You're supportive of local things.
Yep.
You're,
employing people.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't know how we're doing on time here, but it might be something where we want to have you guys back a little bit, and kind of talk about some of that.
Is it like a standing ovation?
They're standing
asking us back. Is that kind of like a standing ovation?
Right, exactly. Encore. But now I forgot where I was going to go with that because maybe we want to dig into something else. But you do provide a service to the community. Talking about, growth, moving to that point where you can run the business and stepping back into that role of being the brain and figuring out how did you say it when you were at the store, you were working in the business, and when you were at home, you were working on, is that how you said that? Working on the business. And so there's a certain level of growth that needs to happen to be able to do that. And that's what we're kind of wrestling with right now of what people do we need to put in place to allow, if we are going to grow, to allow, the step back to, to make that happen. And that's part of the, bringing Forrest on with us. And so thankful for him and so thankful for the gifts that God provides. But I think a lot of times if we really are smart about it, we will watch for God to move in those areas, right? You didn't go looking for Sparta.
No.
Somebody called you and said, hey, there's a building here.
Yep.
And you're like, okay, God, all right, I'm listening. What do you got to say? And again, that entrepreneur mindset of I'm just going to jump in and I'm going to go do it, and then I'll ask God for something and keep doing. Well, I just so much appreciate that particular piece of the story right there of you saying we weren't looking for it. It showed up, and then we started listening. But the growth to a point where you can step back and run the business, because I think there's a lot of people that want to be there, but their business isn't in the place where they should be there. Right. So maybe we'll look into that at some point, getting you guys back on to talk about that as your business continues to grow, or not, stay where it is. But yeah, so let's wrap it up and put a bow on it. Why don't you kind of give us a couple, 2-3 nuggets for somebody to just take away from this, and just, okay, boil it all down to something, Pat. Give me something, Lori, that I can take away today and hang on to.
So I would step back and say that we've always looked at our business, at home you steward.
Right.
Everything we have is God's. And
Right.
so we look at we look at business the same way, that it's His.
Mm-hmm.
And actually it's interesting because sometimes we'll be struggling with a couple pieces of machinery and they're broke and I got to deal with it the next day. God, we have 3 situations that are happening and I need help with that. What are we going to do? What are we going to do? And lo and behold, by the time I get to work the next day, one has resolved itself, one has an easy answer, and the other one, it's more clear to me. So we feel like it's all His.
Mm-hmm.
When we were at staffing crunches, hey, God, you've made us successful. You brought us here. We need people. So you have people, please send them. Mm-hmm. And He does.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's not ours. We're just stewarding it.
Right.
I would certainly say, based on the first business example that we gave, is I would be very leery of going into business with family, no matter what kind of document you draw up or how you handshake it or agree upon it. It changes Thanksgiving, man. It's not recommended. And we're at a little bit of not a crossroads, but our youngest son, Ray, shows interest. He works with us. He runs Sparta. I don't know if I want him to have it. I don't
want to put him in that position.
Well,
right.
Like you said, Thanksgiving, turkey tastes a lot different when there's money involved.
Yeah. And then I heard on Caleb and Sarah's their podcast that they mentioned the Sunday thing. Mm-hmm. And I'd like to share that a little bit because we used to do Sundays, because it was just the 2 of us and our kids, and we're working all day doing the equipment, and now it's the graduation season or the parties or the reunions. We're going out on Friday night, man. We're setting stuff up, or we're setting it up on Saturday. We have to be at the store on Monday. We're out on Sunday collecting tents, And I went on a men's retreat a while back, and it ended on a Sunday. It was 5 days, which was crazy. No phone, no contact. She had emergency stuff, and it was it was a good men's retreat. I learned a lot on it, and we're getting to the final stages, and it's Sunday. I got to go stop at the shop, and see what's up and see what happened over the last 5 days. Well, why? You said it was God's business,
right? And
you said it's being handled. And why do you got to go in there on Sunday? It's like, I don't know. I just always have. I thought to see what's going on Monday, to be prepared. I didn't do it. I haven't done it since. We got emergency situation that pops up, but we take the Sabbath. We go to church, and I'm not saying you got to go to church. You got to read your Bible all day, but it says it even in books, science books, or health guides. It says you should take a day of rest. We take a day of rest.
Right. Do you trust God? Do you trust God that 6 days is enough, that He can handle it on the 7th? Now, obviously, like you said, you got I go rent a skid steer and want to, dig, Sunday afternoon, and I've paid for it, and the skid steer breaks down. Hey, obviously you got to do that. Well, then the guy that does that takes the next day off. Whatever. You get your day of rest. Hey, it makes sense to do it on Sunday because we're worshiping, we're a family, whatever. But yeah, you got to rest. I think that's a big thing for entrepreneurs. Because we're always on. Our minds are always on. 11 o'clock last night. I'm cruising marketing ideas. It's just where I am. But, I think part of Genesis 1 and then He rested is, look, He's got this. And if it really is His business, then I got no business working on Sunday because, that's His.
We're not obnoxious about our faith when it comes to in business. We got to get back to the prayer in the mornings. We did that, kind of got away from it. But the Sunday thing is a chance for us to regroup and recalibrate. And whether you believe it or not, it's, we don't answer the phones. We address the emergency stuff or whatever.
Sure, right.
But you mentioned, this is what I was getting up to, I guess, is you mentioned, so if we're obnoxious in our faith, or we do this ad and it turns somebody away, or it turns,
right.
I've always thought, well, if it turns that guy away, God's going to send 10 more in His place.
Exactly.
So we're not obnoxious in it. We're not boisterous about it. We're not saying, look at me because I give here and there, or we have a cross on the truck or a verse at the store. That's just, we're sowing the seeds, putting it out there for
One
God.
One waters and other plants.
Yeah.
And frankly, we were talking about this the other day. If someone is really going to choose not to do business with me because of my faith,
Yay.
Do I right? Do I really want to do business with
Right.
that person
Mm.
anyway?
Yeah.
And so, that was a big eye opener for us, and I appreciate you bringing that up, because that was kind of a big, just like a, oh yeah, if they're, the person who is going to be like, I don't care. Yeah, I want that person. Oh yeah, they're Christians. Okay, fine, whatever. They're going to put my roof on. They're going to rent me a piece of equipment. Okay, that's the person I want in the room, because the door is not slammed shut and locked. That's the person I want to do business with.
And I think customers appreciate it too. A lot of times CSG is playing on the radio and they
Sure,
hear
that
our
kind of
ads on their way
thing.
there. They go, oh, we like the music station that you've chosen. But whether you are a Christian or profess to be a Christian, you would think you're going to get a better deal, or at least an honest
Somebody
deal.
be honest
You know what I
deal,
mean?
right?
It's
We would
not
hope
gonna-
so, right?
Well, you would hope so,
We
right?
would hope so.
Yeah.
Yeah, I get, my thing was subtlety in display and then loud in the relationship. Our logo has the 3 nails in the R, and it's subtle. But people will walk up and say, and they'll ask, like, they're not sure, like, is that like a faith-based thing? Like, they're not sure. And I like it that way, because it just is one step back in a subtlety standpoint, because I think a lot of times we can hide behind our crosses. I think we can, well, I've got the cross out there, so I run so it's a Christian business, and so, I can just keep going because I checked the Christian box on the side of my trailer that's got a big cross on it, or a Bible, whoever builds the house, and, whatever. So yeah, no, I appreciate that. Guys, this has been a lot of fun, and it's been a blessing to me just to kind
thanks
of
for
see
having
things
us.
and talk growth. And maybe we'll get you back on and kind of talk about that concept of growing the business to the point where, where we're working on the business all the time instead of in and then on. So yeah, we do appreciate you being on the show. We would ask you folks that, the podcast continues to grow, and there are a lot of people that are being blessed to it. I run into people all the time. Oh, I'm so thankful you guys are recording again. And so getting this in front of people can be a blessing to people. And so we would just ask you who are listening, go ahead and share the most recent podcast on your Facebook page. Go into your platform, Apple Podcasts, or I think Google's migrating over to YouTube now. Spotify, go in there and hit the subscribe link or the follow link. And what that's going to do is cause those platforms to put us higher on the list so that we can bless more people with that. And we would just love, as all of you have listened, obviously Pat and Lori's story could really be a blessing to some people going through some stuff. And so the more people that can hear that, the more the blessing it's going to be. So share some Facebook posts, and we do thank you for listening as always, and God bless you.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.